Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Mysteries Education House. Today we will be studying subject economics in this session. Today I will be covering features of microeconomics answer. So let's begin. So basically I am hoping that you are aware about the concept of microeconomics. If not, so I will try to tell it in short. Microeconomics is a part of economics which deals with individual units. So what do we do in microeconomics is take a particular thing and study it at individual level. Now what is the opposite of microeconomics, or a partner of microeconomics, is macroeconomics, wherein we study huge units at once. So to clear the concept, let us take some examples. So considering a country is basically a macro unit, which is studied in macroeconomics. When we are considering a country, a state becomes a microeconomic. So are you getting my point? Even state is a huge thing, but since we are comparing it with a country, here in country is a macroeconomy and state is a microeconomy, because a country is made up of many states. Now, if our first unit is a state and second unit is a city or a town or a village, in this case, state is a macroeconomy and cities, towns and villages are a microeconomy. So, are you getting the point? Both the concepts can be anything. It's just about comparison, what is micro and what is macro. So, micro basically means small and macro is huge. So, when we are comparing between things, the smaller things are always micro and the larger things are always macro. Okay, so I think the concept, the difference between micro and macro is clear. So let's just get into the feature of microeconomy. So in the study of microeconomics, we study individual units. Like I just said while explaining the difference between micro and macro, we consider the individual units. So herein, let's get into the comparison ahead. Let's say that I am dealing with a country. While dealing with the country, to deal with a country, I will take individual units in it. That can be states, that can be cities, union territories, any units that forms a country, and study each and every unit differently. Then this is an individual unit study. So can I say that it can be done in smaller quantities? Not in country. A country is a huge quantity. So yeah, it can be done in a smaller quantity as well. So let's consider a society or an area where you live in. Let's say there are 100 homes in it. In a building there can be 100 homes. In an area there can be 100 homes. Consider anything. 100 homes are there. So the whole area is to be studied. But what do we do then? We go to each and every house and make study of each and every house. What did we do here? We studied the individual units. So in microeconomics, then this would be called microeconomics, because in microeconomics we have to study individual units differently. So that's the first point, study of individual units. Other point is price theory. So microeconomics, one of the we can say one of the major importance or significance of microeconomics is that we use it to derive prices. Prices of what? Prices of everything. Prices of goods, prices of services, prices of factors of production. If you remember 11th standard concepts of factors of production are those things which are used to make goods and services. The 5 major factors of production are land, labor, capital, entrepreneur and raw material. The use of factors of production is indirect. All these concepts. So it is not just, remember this, microeconomics is not just used to find the prices of goods and services, but it is also used to derive the prices of factors of production. Now why? We can say easily that we are deriving prices of goods and services by microeconomics, because any individuals like me, you, your neighbor, all of us are demanding goods and services, and due to which prices are decided. Okay, so let's just say a chocolate costs rupees 10. How is this price derived? that most of the people are ready to buy it at rupees 10. The whole concept of demand and supply we will study in the further sessions, but right now let's just say in an average way that since most of the people are ready to pay rupees 10 for that chocolate, the cost of the price of that chocolate is 10. It is very easy to understand that due to microeconomics, due to each and every individual and their collaboration, price of goods and services are derived. But why is it said that price of factors of production are also derived by microeconomics? Same thing, same thing. Each and every different maker, a producer, the people who produce it, each and every producer is considered differently. So when they are considered differently individually, obviously it is microeconomics. So even the prices of factors of production are derived by microeconomics. So that's the price theory which says that microeconomics is to be used to derive the prices of things. Then is the concept of partial equilibrium. For to understand the heading itself, we need to understand the concept of equilibrium. What is equilibrium? Equilibrium is derived from the word equal, or in this sense balanced. Balanced is more accurate word to say. So I will take an example of a bean balance, the thing that vegetable vendors use to weigh the vegetables. So say in this side there is 500 grams weight. To make it balance, how much vegetables needs to be put in this side? Obviously exactly 500 grams. A bit more will be imbalance, a bit less too will be imbalance from this side. Okay, so equilibrium here is when a point where both of these are exactly equal in the same line. So how does it relate to economy? Again, just replace the factors. Here it's not weight and here it's not vegetables. Here it's income and here it's expenses. So to get exact equal income and expenses is the point of equilibrium or the point of balance. Likewise, many factors can be put this side and this side as well. I give example of income and expenses. You can take example of income and consumption. You can take example of demand and supply. Everything is related to equilibrium. So what does this point say? That if we are studying microeconomics, we can only study partial equilibrium, not complete equilibrium. Now, why can't we study complete equilibrium? Because it is a study of individual unit, right? So what we are doing is considering only one person. So for a complete economic study, one person does matter, but for full calculation one person does not matter. Just the calculation point of view. So it's like saying that one person is very happy. So what do we derive here? Nothing but that one person is happy, nothing more. So when the economics of one particular person is at equilibrium, then it just means that that one person is in equilibrium and nothing more than that. So why is it called partial equilibrium? The total equilibrium concept focuses on whole economy. That is, in our case it's India or any other country. One country is considered economy. The language of economics, country word is not used, nation word is not used. It said economy, Indian economy, US economy, something like that. So if you are using microeconomics, we can never find out a total equilibrium, or to be very specific, equilibrium of a particular country. So what do we get? We can get partial equilibrium. Now, can this partial equilibrium be used to find out total equilibrium? Yes, we can do that. What do? Merge all the partial equilibriums, get an average, and that itself is the total equilibrium. So many microeconomic units form a whole economy. Likewise, many partial equilibriums forms a total equilibrium. So that way we can do, but individually it's just a study of my partial equilibrium and not a total equilibrium. Okay, so continuing further, next point is it's based on certain assumptions. This point is common in almost all the answers in economics. let it be any answer. After this, there is a answer of macroeconomics. Even in macroeconomics, it's based on certain assumptions. Each and every answer in economics is based on certain assumptions. So what are the assumptions here? There are two major assumptions. The two major assumptions are ceteris paribus or ceteris paribus. It's a Latin word. Latin word that means that other things being constant. So other things being constant, what does it say? That focus only on the 2-3 factors that you are dealing with. So let's say, continuing my previous example, if I am considering income and expenses, so focus only on income and focus only on expenses. Just consider that all other factors are constant. So what are the other factors in cases of income and expenses? Consumption is a other factor, population is a other factor, employment level is a other factor. All these are other factors. So if I am considering income and expenses, the change should only be seen in these two factors, that is income and expenses. Let's assume that that's what the concept says. That's not what I am saying. The concept itself says that if you are studying income and expense, let's assume that all the other things are constant. Let's assume that none of the other things will change. So that's the concept of ceteris paribus, which means other things being constant. Okay, so and other main assumption is laissez-faire. Laissez-faire is French word, which means no government intervention. So it says that while we are studying any particular factor or any individual unit, all of a sudden government policy will not change. Is it applicable in real life? No, it is not. Government policies can change overnight. Okay, so that's why it's called assumptions, because it's just assumption. It does not happen in real life. So what does this say? That again, if I'm studying income and expenses, while I'm studying it, there will be no change in government policies. Government will not intervene to do anything, and I am on my own. I can do anything I want to. Okay, so laissez-faire is a concept where government intervention in the economy is not, or minimum is not there, or it's minimum. Okay, there are several other examples that there is perfect competition or there is full employment. Again, this is a big assumption, because most developed countries in world, let's say USA or Japan or Russia, even they don't have 100% employment. But this concept tells us that we should assume that there is 100% employment, because other things being constant. So it's related to that. Okay, so that's the assumption that certain assumptions is one of the feature of microeconomic study. Next is slicing method. So where does this slicing concept come from? Like in bread, not like in bread, exactly like bread. So what's exactly like bread? Why it's called slicing method? So macroeconomics and microeconomics here is considered opposite, wherein in macro you take the whole bread and deal with it. So that's called lump of bread, and in macroeconomics it's called lumping method. Whereas in microeconomics, what do? We slice the bread in small pieces and study each piece differently. So that's why it's called slicing method. It's just another different way to say that it's a study of individual unit. But what's the difference here? That in case of individual units, the focus is on units. So what are the units? Price. In case of price, rupees or dollars is a unit. In case of income also, again, rupees, dollars is a unit. In case of population, number of people are a unit. So that there the focus is on the units, whereas here the focus is on breaking. So what does it say? In case of slicing method, 100 can be divided into 10 each also. But when we say units, 10 people is still 10 people. So focus is on people, whereas here the focus is on pieces. So each piece of 10, 100 is divided by 10. So here it would be, say in slicing method, it would be say each slice is of 10 people. So 10 people will be studied together. So then will you say that it's not microeconomy? Yes, it is micro. understand this. What's the main part? What's the main part? Sorry, not the main part. What's the original part? Original part was 100 people. We are studying 100 people completely, but what did we do is that we took 10 people at a time. So we divided into smaller units. So that's where the microeconomics came in. And but we are studying more than one single unit at a time, so it cannot be called individual unit. So this is slicing. What's the difference in slicing and individual unit is, in case of individual unit, one and only one is considered, but in case of slicing method, one and only one can be considered as well as more than one, but smaller than the whole is considered at a given point of time. Okay, so I hope that's clear. If you have more doubts related to it, you can always ask in comments. I will definitely reply on it and clear the doubts. Okay, so moving forward, the microeconomic uses the marginalization or marginalism principle. So what is marginalism? The word marginal means extra or above or increment, something like that. So to understand marginal, we will remember forever, wherever the word marginal is, that remember this particular example: 10,000 and 12,000. So 10,000 and 12,000. If we say word marginal, we remember the 2,000. So originally there was 10,000, then it was 12,000. But we don't focus on whole 12,000. We just focus on the 2,000, the increased value. Same way we can also say decreased value, because in economics negative units are also units. So 10,000 and 8,000. So we focus on negative 2,000. Originally it was 10,000, then it became 8,000. The negative 2,000 is marginal. So hope the concept of marginal, what is marginal, is clear. Now let's get into how microeconomics uses the marginalism principle. So while studying microeconomics, we see increase and decrease at individual level. Joining the previous point, the individual unit point, we see increase and decrease at individual level. So let's take a good example in this. The example that you can relate to in actual life. Say a country's GDP is, say, 100 crores. Okay. After 1 year, the country's GDP increased to 120 crores. It's simple that country is growing because there is an increment of 20 crore in GDP. But does it mean that everyone in the country is happy? No. Here's where the concept of marginalism comes in. It's this ratio, the change just showed that the whole country, the macro economy, has grown. It doesn't necessarily mean that microeconomic has grown too. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a chance that the increase in 20 crore, that increase in 20 crore GDP just went in hands of top 1% people. So did the government give them? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that they were the ones who produced more, and hence they were the ones who contributed more to the GDP. So increase in GDP doesn't necessarily mean that the increase is at micro level as well. It just means that it's at macro level. So to avoid this situation, while we are studying microeconomy, we focus on marginalism principle. So what will happen is that we will study each and every time we study microeconomy, we will study that is there an increase or decrease in micro units? Is there an increase or decrease in one family or one person or a group of person? Small units, is there an increase in all the small units? If there is an increase in majority of the small units, then we can say that the country has actually grown. Otherwise, just increase in GDP may not mean that the country has grown as whole. It may just mean that country has grown, but only a few have grown with it. Okay, so this concept is very important, marginalism concept, to understand that what's the increase in macro units or decrease in macro units. That's how the country's real value comes out. Otherwise, just income does not matter. Okay. So moving forward, the next point is analysis of market structure. So this point is very easy to remember, and that's not there's not much I can explain about it. It says that while studying microeconomics, we study different forms of market. So what are the different forms of market? Perfect competition market, monopoly market, monopolistic market, oligopoly market. What are these? I will tell you each in one line, because in further chapters you will have one answer, one big answer for each of this heading. So there you have to study these in detail. So right now I won't go in detail. And talking of further standards, in higher standards in UK, if you have economics as a subject in year 13th, 14th, 15th, anywhere, you will have one chapter for each of these. So obviously they are important, but right now I will just teach in one line just to explain the basics. What does it mean? Further, we will study this in very detail. So perfect competition is a form of market wherein there are infinite, not actually infinite, obviously nothing is infinite, but it's a way of saying it that there are many sellers and there are many buyers, or in economical terms there are infinite number of sellers and infinite number of buyers. So India is, in most senses, in most of the products, India is a perfect competition market. Let's say basic of clothes. How many number of shops of clothes are there in your locality? It may be hard to count because there are many. And how many people buy from that shop? Again, it's hard to count because many people buy. So that's a good example of perfect competition where there are many buyers and many sellers. Okay, so that's the basic perfect competition. Then there is monopoly market. All of us have heard the game called Monopoly. That's exactly what it means. That finally only one person wins. Even in this situation, in monopoly market, one person wins, and who's that person? Is that one seller. In monopoly market, for some particular products or one particular product, mostly for some particular products, there is only one seller and rest all are just buyers. So is there a real life example for this? Yes, there is. At world level there is. At country level there isn't one. At world level, Sony is the only company that produces lenses for cameras. So let it be your phone camera of any particular company, let it be Motorola, let it be Xiaomi or any other company, but the lens used in that camera would be of Sony only, because it's a monopoly for making lenses. Likewise, China has patented or copyrighted, what's the legal term, I don't know, but they have done something with the animal panda. So if any country has pandas, they are actually paying the copyrights or patents to China for just zooing the panda, because panda is particularly something that belongs to China. So that's a kind of monopoly that only one country. Now see here, since we are considering whole globe together, whole earth together, even countries are micro units here. So China micro level when we are considering the whole world, China, just one particular country, controls the rights of panda in whole world. So that's a form of monopoly. So that's monopoly, one particular seller for one particular product and many buyers. Then there is monopolistic competition. What is monopolistic competition? That there are few sellers, mostly less than 5, very few sellers, less than 5, and there are many, rest all are buyers in fact. So the best example for this, what I remember, as for India is concerned, not at world scale, I don't know at world scale what's going on in this particular stream. As far India is concerned, the cold drink manufacturers are only PepsiCo and Coca-Cola. So let it be any other brand, it 90% of the brands fall under only these two. So even Parley is a produces cold drink. Undoubtedly, Fruity is a Parley drink, but mostly all then too the totally number of cold drink producers in India would be less than five. So let it be Maaza, Mangola or Slice, all this comes under PepsiCo or Coca-Cola. That's monopolistic. And even biscuit manufacturers are, I think, are monopolistic. So because we know only few companies that produces biscuits. We know Parle, we know Britannia, we know Cadbury, we know Priya Gold, we know Sunfeast. I think that's all I have heard of. You can share in comments if you know of any other company producing biscuits. Biscuits I think are falls under monopolistic. So do remember what is monopolistic. Let's not revolve around the examples only. Monopolistic basically means that there are very few sellers, but not one. One means monopoly. Monopolistic means more than one, but very few, and rest all are buyers only. And oligopoly is most difficult to understand, a very critical concept. Oligopoly is kind of a mixture of perfect competition and monopoly. So what happens here is that area specific monopoly, uh, it can be said like that. What's the area specific monopoly? So in that particular area, for that particular product, there is only one seller, but in the whole market there are many sellers. So for example, let's say a product like a burger, in a 5 kilometer radius there is only one person or one shop that sells burger. If you want to purchase burger in that radius itself, you have to buy only and only from that shop, because there is no other shop selling burger in that particular locality. So does the whole market have only one burger vendor? No. You can travel, you have to travel a long distance and then you can buy burgers at some other place, but in that particular area only one burger center is there. So this is an example of oligopoly. Area specific monopoly. So in that particular area, he has monopoly, the seller has monopoly, but totally he does not have monopoly, because the same product is available at in the whole market at different places. Okay, so last final point is limited scope. So this says that the concept of microeconomy, the whole learning of microeconomy has limited scope. So I particularly don't support this point. I will tell you why. So what does this say? That limited scope, that government cannot solve major problems like poverty, inflation, unemployment, all these problems, population increase, all these problems by use of microeconomics. So obviously government has to think for whole country while dealing with these problems. So it can be it said that its scope is limited. It solves problems, but small problems. It does not solve large problems like inflation, poverty and all. So that's why it said that it has limited scope. But why don't I support this point is because that I believe that each and every person at micro level can make a change. So let's just say problem of poverty. If each and every individual focuses on poverty, their particular poverty at a micro level, then too the problem of poverty can be solved. That's what I believe. But again, since the textbook is telling it, obviously that's what we write in exams, that limited scope. Okay, so the answer is done, and I forgot to tell in the beginning of the video. So now I'm saying again, like previous videos, I have used Maharashtra government textbook for this answer, Maharashtra state government textbook, and again I would suggest that you too use the same textbook. If your college is willing or wanting you to write answer from any other textbook, then you have to write it, because you have to appear exams in college as well. So then you can use. But again, for board point of view, answers of government textbook are considered best, as government is taking exams, and that's how it should be. So it's a Maharashtra government textbook I am using. It's available in all the government portals, internet, and even in shops. You can buy it, or you can use the internet version as well. Now how to remember this answer. Exam point of view, it gets hard to remember the answer. So again, I have prepared a shortcut for you to remember the answer, and obviously the shortcut will have a small story related to it. Okay, so all of us knows the story of Aladdin and the magic lamp. Aladdin had a lamp which fulfilled 3 wishes. So how does the story go? That once Aladdin lost his lamp, and he's trying to find the lamp using maps. So who is Aladdin in this scenario? Mr. A, that is me, I am Aladdin. So how do I remember this? I, lamp, maps. I lost the lamp and used maps to find it. So in short, I, lamp, maps. So I stands for individual unit. The point was study of individual unit, but the core point here is individual unit. So that's what we will remember. I stands for individual units. L stands for limited scope. The last point that we studied was that microeconomics has limited scope. It does not solve all the problems. So L stands for limited scope. Then AM is together because in one heading 2 words are important. So to highlight the importance of both the words, the header itself has 2 alphabets. AM, LAMP, lamp. We studied L as limited scope. AM stands for analysis of market structure. A for analysis, M for market. Analysis of market structures. This was the point of perfect competition, monopoly market, that one. Then P stands for price theory. It revolves around pricing of goods and services as well as of 4 factors of production. Then M, maps, MAPS. M stands for marginalism principle. It studies the increment or decrease in the units. A stands for assumptions. Certain assumptions, few assumptions, many assumptions, anything can be written. Adjective is not important. The main word is assumptions here. So it has many assumptions. A, assumptions. P, partial equilibrium. So it deals in partial equilibrium. Like I told, total equilibrium cannot be found by direct use of microeconomics. You will have to add all the answers of microeconomics to get total equilibrium, but otherwise it's partial equilibrium. Then S, finally S is for slicing method. So I had given that the word is taken from the bread, lump and slice. So what does it stand for? S stands for slicing method, wherein we slice the whole macroeconomy in small slices and study each and every slice differently. And I told you that remember and don't get confused between the individual units point and slicing method points. Individual unit points is just considered one and only one, whereas slicing method can count more than one but less than whole. Go through the video again if you are getting confused. Both these points are a bit similar, but it's not same exactly, it's completely different. Okay, so I, lamp, maps, that's the answer. And I hope you liked the video. If you like the video, please like, share and comment. And also if there is any particular answer you want me to make video on of standard 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th of commerce section, please do write in comments. I will definitely read the comments and try to make a simpler answer or teach the answer in my further videos. Thank you. That's all for the video. Bye bye.